Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. So in today's head-to-head comparison, we're going to take a look at two of the latest models from Jeep. So we have the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392 and the Jeep Wrangler 4xe. Now for the 392, the Rubicon is the only trim level that you can get for the 392. You can also only get it in the four-door version. For the 4xe, you can only get that in the four-door version as well, but you can get a few different trim levels depending on which one you'd like to go with. Now for the Rubicon 392, it has an MSRP right around $75,000, whereas the top trim level for the 4xe is right around $58,000. So there is a significant price difference between both of these, simply because the 392 only comes with the Rubicon, so you can't get that any cheaper. But these are two very different but very similar Wranglers, and we are going to get both of these out on the road. We'll also go over all the specs for these just to compare them and see which one is better and why. As we start off with the Rubicon 392, underneath the hood, this is powered by a 6.4 liter Hemi V8. It's paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission. It pumps out 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque. That power is sent through the all-wheel drive system. It weighs in right around 5,100 pounds. It'll do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. It has a top speed just shy of 100 miles an hour. And for its fuel economy, it gets around 13 miles per gallon in the city and 17 out on the highway. Now for the 4xe, this has a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo engine, so much smaller of course than the V8. It's paired to the same 8-speed automatic transmission, and it pumps out 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. That power sent through the full-time 4-wheel drive system, just like in the 392. It weighs in right around 5,100 pounds. Pretty surprising to see that with this hybrid electric system. Weighs about the same as a V8. It'll do 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. Has a top speed just over 110 miles an hour. And for its fuel economy, you're looking at around 20 miles per gallon in the city, 49 miles out on the highway combined with the electric system, and you can also go around 21 miles just on the electric range. And as we work our way to the exterior styling now for both of these Wranglers, they are going to be pretty much the same. However, for this 392, as you can tell with the hood, this has a massive hood scoop. This is the Hydro Glide that Jeep calls it. It will not only help direct airflow, but it will also direct water. If you're taking this off-road and water goes over the hood, it will direct that away from the intake, which is pretty cool to see. The 392 also gets a lot of these gold accents that you can see on the tow hooks for this front bumper. There's also some of that trim in the grille up front. And aside from that, it's going to be very similar to the 4xe. So Jeep is known for having that grille design along with the headlights, having the turn signals over on the fenders as well, even having fog lights down in the steel bumper. So the bumper is going to be a little bit different. It is steel on this 392, and you have some areas where you could actually take this off if you need even more clearance. Now over on the 4xe, you can see it has a similar design to it. However, this bumper is finished off in body colored, so it is not steel. We have the same design for the grille, the headlights, the turn signals, even for the fog lights. But as you can tell, slightly different compared to the 392. There's no hood scoop, but it has a similar design to it, similar amount of ground clearance as well. So overall, it has a nice design to it. Now for this 392, from the factory, this comes with 35-inch tires. On this particular model, they are 37s, wrapping the factory wheel, however. So that is the wheel that you get for the 392, along with having the Fox suspension. The Rubicon also has a 1-inch lift over a non-Rubicon or over the V6 model, so it is a little bit higher. It's going to be a little bit taller than the 4xe, and then the rest of it is going to be very similar to the 4xe as well. This model has body colored side mirrors. It has the sky roof too, which you can get on the 4xe. Fenders are going to be the same. This has the side steps too to help you enter and exit. And as you can tell with the 4xe, we have the Fox shocks. This model has 35-inch tires with some aftermarket wheels, so of course that can change the look slightly, but everything else is very, very similar, including the My Sky roof. So I'll show a clip real quick. I think this is my favorite roof option because you can actually take the rear glass out. Along with the doors, you have the sky roof open. You pretty much have an open top experience without having to remove the entire roof. Now for the rear end for this 392, a full-size spare along with LED taillights on both sides. There's the third brake light above the spare. The 392 also has the dual exhaust system, which you'll hear later in this video, along with being able to remote start it too, which is pretty awesome. And then for the rear end of the 4xe, just to show you the visual, very similar, body colored rear bumper instead of a steel bumper, which you saw over on the 392. The exhaust is also a traditional system, so it's not as loud as on the 392. And everything else is very similar, as you've already seen. Both of these can also tow right around 3,500 pounds, which is pretty respectable for the Wrangler. And then as we move on to the cargo space, it's going to be identical. There's really not going to be any differences for the interiors. As far as storage space goes, even the storage that you get up underneath the floor, and you'll see that same design over on the 4xe as well, including the speaker, and then you have all the bolts for the doors and all those hinges that you can remove. For the back seats now, for the 392, this model has leather seats, which is great. You have the 3-prong outlet along with the window controls in the middle. And that's pretty much it. You'll see the same thing over on the 4xe as well. These seats are finished off in leather. With the My Sky roof, you're going to have about the same amount of headroom too. And then for the front seats, you'll see Rubicon 392 stitched in the top of the seats. They are manual adjusting. We have leather on the steering wheel too, and a bunch of controls to go through. For the 4xe, leather on the seats as well. A little bit different of a design with all of the stitching. And then for the infotainment system and the center gauge cluster, you are going to see a ton of similarities. They both have the large 8.4-inch touchscreen system, which is nice to have. But on the 4xe, you have different driving modes. You can go to hybrid, electric, or the e-save mode. Whereas on the 392, you only have one driving mode, and everything else is going to be exactly the same. There's lockers on the 392, you have some auxiliaries that you can use, and then over on the 4xe, you only have some auxiliaries, so there's no lockers for this model. With the 392 being the Rubicon, that's going to give you all those extra goodies. But now we have the more powerful V8 engine that I think a lot of Wrangler owners are going to be excited about and wanting to upgrade to get the V8, because who doesn't want a V8, especially in a vehicle like this? And I think the biggest benefit with having the V8 is, of course, a lot more power. I've been in even the turbo diesel engine that has a lot of torque. It almost has as much torque as this, but not nearly as much horsepower. And especially when you're running larger tires like these 37s, not only do you want more power, but you want better gearing. With the Rubicon, this comes with the Dana 44 axles, so we do have the larger, beefier axles, along with having better gearing and more power to handle and turn these 37s. But we're going to downshift and listen to that V8. Now the steering is still a little bit vague. You know, the Wrangler is not known for its handling or its performance, but now we have straight line performance and we have power to take this off-road. That should not be happening in a Jeep Wrangler. That is pretty cool. That's a quick Jeep. You're going to have a ton of fun getting the V8 in this. That sounds so good. Now, even coming around a turn like this, like I mentioned earlier, steering input is not the greatest. It is a Wrangler, it does have 37s on it, but that's to be expected. You're not buying this for the performance necessarily as far as the handling goes, you know, driving out on the roads. This is more geared towards having that performance for off-road. We have the larger tires for more clearance, for more height. We have more power. I think this is really neat. Just driving it around in the parking lot. I've had it in the electric mode, so it hasn't been using any of the gas, which I think is pretty cool, especially in a vehicle like this. It's not something you would technically or really expect to see in a Wrangler, but Jeep is coming out with the 392. They're putting superchargers in the V8s. Now they're going to this hybrid electric system, which again, I think is really cool. We have the different driving modes that I've showed earlier. So currently we are in hybrid. There's also electric and then the e-save. So electric mode saves fuel for later use. And then if I put it into the e-save, it saves the battery for later use. So with it in hybrid now, I believe that is the full horsepower and torque figures. Let's give it a little bit of gas. Oh. Now there was a slight delay to that, but that's pretty quick. You don't hear any exhaust note whatsoever, so this is not a loud vehicle. If you're looking for that, go with the 392. You're gonna get all of that V8 exhaust noise. Now that we are in electric mode, you can definitely tell there's a difference between the hybrid and the electric there. And we are up and moving. That is the electric. There's that instant torque I was talking about with the electric range. So now coming back to our final thoughts between the Rubicon 392 and the 4xe. Honestly, I like both of these. I do lean towards the 392 a little bit more because being a car enthusiast, I love the exhaust note that that V8 throws out. I owned a Wrangler that had the V6, so getting to drive the V8 was pretty awesome, and I think it's a cool option to go with. But I do think that the 4xe is also a good option to go with if you still want a Wrangler, but you also want to get a little bit better MPG. You want that electric side, that hybrid electric system, which I think is pretty cool. Now, if they had a hybrid electric in the 392 with the V8, you could have the V8, you could also have a little bit better MPG, so maybe Jeep can do that. They're throwing in some crazy engines in a lot of their vehicles, so maybe that's the next step. But I do think that the 4xe is the best of both worlds because you can have that Jeep life, you can also have that MPG life, and still get a pretty good combination with the 4xe. So it really just depends on what you're going for. There is a price difference between both of them, but you might be cross-shopping them. You might be thinking about going with the big Hemi V8 or going to the hybrid electric system. Either way, they are both great options. So I just wanted to compare Jeep's biggest Hemi V8 with their new hybrid electric system for the Wrangler. I think it's a pretty cool option to go with. You can also go with the V6, like I mentioned earlier. So you have a few different trim levels and engine options to choose for the Wrangler. I think it's a pretty cool SUV. It's very different than any other SUV, and you have some different engine options, which is awesome. So comment down below which Jeep Wrangler you would go with and why, and also if you would pick a two-door, which is not available for these trim levels, but you can get a two-door Jeep Wrangler. If you enjoyed today's video, give it a huge thumbs up. Consider smashing that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our daily uploads. I will see you all in the next video.